Hello. In this video, we will cover the 5 questions to ask an architect before hiring them. This video is recorded exclusively for realestatebees.com. My name is Mark Nichols. I'm an architect with over 12 years of experience, and I'm licensed in the state of California and Washington. I'm also the principal architect and owner of M. Nichols Design, based in Los Angeles, California. I love all things design and talking about design, so let's dive in. Designing and building a home is one of life's major milestones. It will be a large commitment of your time and resources. So you want to choose the ideal project team to execute your project exactly how you envision it, and choosing the right architect is instrumental to that. Here are the top 5 questions to help you find a high-quality architect that is knowledgeable in your project type, will be responsive to your needs, and be the right fit for your project. Question number 1. How many years of experience do you have in residential architecture? And then off of that initial question, there are some follow-up questions that you can ask, such as, is there a project of yours in the past that is similar to our project? What relevant project experience do you have? In the past project of yours that is similar to our project, what do you think was successful about it, and how did you meet the client's needs? With question 1, it may seem like a really straightforward question, but it's important to understand that architect you're interviewing has relevant experience to your project, or if not, they can convince you that their skill set will be able to achieve the project that you're envisioning. If they have past examples of successful work, it's a really good indicator that they're going to be able to deliver on your project. What's even better is if you've gone through their website and you say, oh, I really like this project of theirs, bring it up in your meeting with them so you can start communicating your expectations for the style of architecture, the size of the home, and the overall aesthetic that you're looking for. It's also important to know what they thought was successful in that project and how they interacted with the client in order to achieve the desired result. Ultimately, this is your project, and unless you're hiring a star architect where you want specifically their design vision and you completely trust them, which is rare, you're going to want the architect to listen to your input. The architect will take everything that you've said, the aesthetic that you're going after, how many rooms you want, the overall size, the desired function of the home, and they'll synthesize that into a beautiful design that you love. That's their role. But ultimately, it's something that's tailored to you. So you need to be clear on how they've been able to do that successfully for past clients, because that shows they're able to listen to clients and take what they need into account and deliver on it. And also, digging into their past projects will give you an idea of, hey, they can really produce something that we like. Question number 2. We know that we are not just hiring you, but a whole team. There will be a structural engineer and other consultants. Do you have recommendations for these consultants? Could you give us an idea of how much you think each consultant would cost and which consultants you think would be required? This question can then lead to follow-up questions such as, which consultants do you include in your scope of work? Which are excluded? Question 2 is important to bring up because you won't just be hiring an architect. For most projects, you will also be hiring a structural engineer, maybe an interior designer. Depending on what state you live in, there might be energy code requirements where you would need someone to run an energy report for your design. You might have a civil engineer. You could even have an NEP consultant, landscape architect, and there's a few other consultants you might need as well. Bringing this up will then give the architect the opportunity to discuss consultants that they like to work with. It'll also give them the opportunity to walk through what consultants they think are going to be required for your project. For instance, any new construction or even a remodel that's moving load-bearing walls or has an addition of new floor area will require a structural engineer and structural calculations. Talking to the architect will help you get an idea of what their anticipated fee might be and how long it might take for them to complete their work to have it ready to submit to permit. The architect can also give great recommendations that are specific to your project. For instance, if you're doing a remodel addition with a pool and new hardscape and landscape around it, it might make sense to bring on a landscape architect. The architect likely has landscape architects they like to work with, and they can go through the list of typical consultants and figure out which ones are both required and would be a nice benefit, even if not necessarily required by code. Question 3. Do you have a recommended general contractor that you think would be an ideal fit for this project and that would work well with us? This could lead to follow-up questions as, do you recommend getting 1 bid, 3 bids from general contractors? Do you typically approach the project as design, bid, build? Or do you have a design build approach where you engage a general contractor early? If so, Could we also interview your potential general contractor? You might also ask, how do you and the general contractor get along? How is the project communication? What's your working style? What's your personality like when it comes to a project? And similar question for the general contractor. Question 3 brings up a very important part of the project, which is interacting with the general contractor. An architect and the client can come up with a perfect design, but if they don't have the right general contractor, it can all fall apart and quickly derail a great project. So as much as you want to interview the architect, you also want to make sure that they have a list of general contractors that they prefer working with and that they've achieved successful results with. Watch out for architects that don't have any recommendations for general contractors or haven't worked with many general contractors before, because they might be bringing an unvetted GC to the table. Hiring a great general contractor is just as important as hiring a great architect. So make sure to bring up with the architect how they'll interact with the GC and what GCs they're bringing to the table. Question 4. Are your design services all-inclusive, or are there items that are considered additional services? For instance, do you consider renderings and video walkthroughs as an additional service that would be billed on top of the initial fee? Would more visits to the city or site visits or handling plan check corrections be considered additional services? What do you include in your scope of services, and what do you consider above and beyond and would be an extra fee? With question 4, it's important to get an idea of exactly what the architect will be providing. You should get at least 3 proposals or bids from different architects. You'll want to know what they provide and don't provide when comparing, because one architect might have a relatively low fee, but when you see the services that you're getting and the amount of additional services fees that you might be paying, they probably will equal out to another architect that provides more inclusive, all-inclusive design services. Be weary of the architect with a really low fee. They've either not properly estimated the time it's going to take on their project, which means they will be less inclined to work on it the farther you get into it, because they will likely not be making money on it. They may also start charging lots of additional services for things that are pretty standard scope of work for an architect. You shouldn't have to pay any additional fee for if there's multiple rounds of plan check or permit corrections. You really shouldn't have to pay for renderings or any sort of visualization, because that's the type of work that you need in order to make an informed decision about your design. And going back and forth with the city to get a permit, that's the necessary steps an architect needs to make in order to get your project ready to be built. So any architect that's putting those as additional services is probably a red flag, and shoot for the architect that includes those things but also has a reasonable fee. You might also ask, do you provide interior design as a scope of services, or is that also an outside consultant? Question 5. How frequently will you be communicating with us throughout the design? Will we have weekly meetings, bi-weekly meetings? Do you primarily like to communicate through email, text, Zoom meeting, video meeting? What's your preferred communication method? This can lead to a follow-up question of, how frequently are you communicating in design, and how quickly are you moving through design? And do you have a general timeline for what the design and permitting will take? How long do you think the initial design will take? How long do you think permitting will take? Or from the start of when we hire you, how long till we can start construction? This will help you get an idea of the overall project timeline and how quickly that architect would work. If they give you quickly a month estimate, like 5 or 6 months, I might dig into that and say, okay, well, how long will it take you to get through schematic design? And when we have a initial design direction locked down from the different design options we're trying out at the beginning of the project. And then how long from schematic design before other consultants like the structural engineer finish their structural drawings and calculations, and we can have a drawing set that's ready to submit for permit review. That wraps up the 5 questions to ask your architect before hiring them. Hopefully you are now prepared to begin the interview process and start your design project. Thanks. Bye.